And you like living here in Iowa, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm not going to tell anyone.
What I'm supposed to say? Oh, it's just fine. It's quiet. The people are real nice.
So yeah, where do you want me to start?
Well, let me just say a quick intro.
Okay.
Hello to the Rock Hard Caucus audience. This is Justin, your host, and I am sitting here now engaging in an exclusive post-election interview with mayoral candidate, Des Moines mayoral candidate Denver Foote. Denver, nice to see you again.
Thanks, Justin, for having me. My name is Denver Foote. I use they, them pronouns. Ex-mayoral candidate, current organizer with Des Moines People's Town Hall. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to you again. We had you on our show a few months ago when you were like in the heavy campaigning swing. Now that's over. The election was a week and a day ago as of this recording. How is life post-election going for you?
So the day after election day, I started going back to work full time instantly. So election day was on Tuesday, and Wednesday I was up early going back into my salon job, which is a walk-in business where I make under $15 an hour. So very kind of like a surreal moment for me, you know?
Yeah. So not, my question was, how's life going? It sounds like it's not amazing, but
it's going good. I'm already working on my next moves. Being a community organizer, you can't just like take a break, but I did take some rest. Sunday was my first day in months that I haven't had a plan or like a meeting or like things I had to do. I think I slept like over 20 hours that day, which was nice.
That's a long time to sleep. I don't know that I've ever slept 20 hours in a day ever in my life.
Well, when you're running a campaign that's like a full-time job, especially if you are unable to hire a campaign manager or have people funding you. So I was working over 40 hours a week and then trying to run a campaign after like 6 p.m. Right. So it was never really a day off.
It took a lot out of you, I imagine. But that's something that I respect about you. What you were just saying about how being an organizer, you never just stop working on this stuff. Like running for mayor was not like your thing exactly. It was just part of a larger thing. You said you're planning out next moves. Is that anything that you want to talk about here, or does it have to be kept hush hush?
So with the campaign, I wasn't frontline organizing anymore. And I'm excited to get back in that. I'm excited to start organizing with Des Moines People's Town Hall more. We kind of have like our first big core meeting since before I announced my campaign, because a lot of people from People's Town Hall kind of shifted over to my campaign naturally. And my dear friend Adam like kept it going. So I'm excited to get back into that. Right now I am specifically personally heated locally by the DART funding that's happening. They're facing 40% of cuts of the budget and of services. And a large part of my platform was expanding transit.
Right. Yeah. DART is like the bus system in Des Moines. Is it?
Yes.
I guess, what does DART stand for? It's an acronym, right?
Yeah. I don't
know. The T is transit. We know that much.
Yeah. The something regional something transit.
Yeah. But anyways, the buses. And you were talking about this before we started recording, but why are they cutting this? Because what I've heard from people who live in Des Moines, yourself included, is that DART does not have enough resources. The bus routes are not good enough for the people who need them in Des Moines. So why are they cutting that?
So it's kind of like a state issue. They kind of restructured local transit things or local transit policies at the state house. So Des Moines is a very rare city where for transit, we don't collect funding for our local transit through like things like vehicle registration, parking tickets, speeding tickets, and sales tax. Even like most cities, if you rent a car, the business that rents cars has to send a certain percentage for local transit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're very different in that aspect. And then they changed it. So over the next few years until 2029, the city of Des Moines, who uses the services most, is going to be taking on 49% of the funding for DART. Whereas right now, I think it's like below 30 because it's distributed through suburbs based on property that's owned, or property taxes or basic income. So that means that the services for DART hasn't grown because our suburbs are mostly like white or families or people who own property and have more money or a higher median income, right?
And they don't want to pay for something that they're not using.
Kind of, but it's like also like that's why the city of Des Moines is going to be taking on such a huger percentage of the funding for DART because Des Moines uses the services the most.
Right, and the suburbs don't.
Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned that parking tickets and things like that don't go towards paying for public transit. Does the money that people pay in parking tickets, is that just going to pay like cops' salaries or something? Where does that money end up? Do you know?
So parking tickets and like speed camera tickets are privatized. Mm-hmm. So the money goes out of state, and there's out of state workers or there's out of country workers who are processing these and filing them, right? And then it's so if you get a speeding trap ticket, you'll look at the envelope and the return sender is somebody not in your city.
I happen to have one right here on my desk.
Or even like country. So they take a percentage of that money, or I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but like they take a percentage of that money and then the rest goes to the city of Des Moines. But because parking tickets and speeding tickets are an enforcement policy, it usually 98% of the time goes back into the police force and their funding.
Yeah. Right. It gives them more incentive to give more tickets because then they get the money. Yeah, this one that I have here is from the city of Cedar Rapids. I got caught on camera going over the speed limit, and the ticket came from Beverly, Massachusetts.
Okay, Beverly, pop off.
Yeah, good for them. So let's talk a little bit about the election itself. Obviously, you are not going to be the mayor. Was that a disappointment to you?
No, it wasn't a disappointment to me at all. I knew it was a far-fetched goal, and I don't mean this to insult my supporters or the people who helped me with the campaign. It's a simple fact that the system is not built for people like me to run for office. But the fact that I raised $5,000 and the person who won mayor raised $400,000 for a mayoral seat is very unprecedented. And the fact that I was able to show up to panels and create the platform for underserved communities that I come from was my goal the entire time. It was my goal to activate new voters, people who probably wouldn't vote in local elections. And on top of it, I proved that a liberal candidate cannot win without the left's vote. Like, you cannot alienate the people who are on the ground organizing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that specifically. So you were in the race, and then there were two candidates who had a lot more money than you and who are city council incumbents. That's Connie Boesen and Josh Mandelbaum. And Connie Boesen ended up winning by a margin of about 700 or 800 votes. And you, Denver, received 971 votes, at least last time I looked at the results. So your share of the vote was larger than the margin between the two absurdly well-funded candidates. Has anyone accused you of being a spoiler yet?
Before I say that, I also want to share the fact that I raised $5,000, so I was more efficient in getting voters. If you cut it down, like, I paid like $1 something a vote, whereas Connie Boesen paid almost $30 per vote. So it proves that, like, you can buy an election. I have been having people reach out to me saying that, like, Josh Mandelbaum lost because of me and he aligns with my values more. But that's, like, very much the tip of the iceberg of, like, hate emails, of, like, death threats that I've gotten throughout this campaign. Just, like, being vocal on, like, the fact that everyone deserves care.
Yeah, that's a controversial issue that you are outspoken on the needs of people not being met in our society. And for that, you deserve to be threatened. Yeah, on the subject of being a spoiler, and you mentioned that you were focused on new voters, people who would not have otherwise voted. So I think if anyone wants to blame you for Josh Mandelbaum losing, aside from the fact that he spent the most money on this race and spent the most money per vote that he received, so the least efficient campaign of the three of you, people should remember that probably a good chunk of those 971 votes that you received would never have voted for either of the other two candidates, because you represent a segment of the Des Moines population who are disgusted by members of the city council, including Connie Boesen and Josh Mandelbaum, and never would have voted for either of them. Right? I mean, you know more than I do who was voting for you.
Yeah. It's the fact that part of my stump speech, right, is that I was running for mayor because I feel a huge urgency for the communities I represent and the communities that are most underserved, right? I feel a huge urgency for trans people. I feel a huge urgency for queer people, for people of color, for people who, go to school hungry. And those are experiences that the other candidates didn't have. They did not grow up in poverty. They did not grow up in a working class family, right? Or an immigrant family, which helped me activate those new voters. It was also the fact that a lot of grassroots organizers or grassroots community members gave me a platform within their events. Like a lot of, like, during Pride Week in Des Moines, I was like booked back to back to back. Like I was one of, like, the only non-binary openly queer candidate.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, especially in the local LGBTQ community, do not feel represented. And I was able to represent them in panels and in interviews.
Yeah. How do you feel you were treated by, like, the mainstream media of Des Moines?
One of my first interviews, even though the teleprompter had my correct pronouns, the news anchor on live refused to use my correct pronouns.
Are you comfortable saying, like, which organization they belong to?
I don't want to misspeak.
Okay.
If I'm incorrect.
Yeah.
I had a very good experience with NPR. They did a Next Gen interview with me. I think it was really clear about what was about my backstory. And I also feel, even though they endorsed Connie Boesen, I feel kind of very confident in the local reporters for Des Moines Register, like the local council reporters, and the Des Moines Register was the only media that was invited into my personal election watch party. Right. So I had very weird media relationships. I feel like most of the media in Des Moines is very center, and you have to just be kind of careful about what you say because they will clip the worst parts. So it's very important, if you ever decide to run for office or you are in a position to talk to media, to be prepared, right? Because you could talk to them for 30 minutes and they'll snip it down to 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that everything you're saying is punctual. And the second I slip up, there's they clip the worst part because I'm the progressive abolitionist,
Yeah, they want to throw you under the bus. It's not friendly. Yeah. So, I mean, everything that I saw from you, but I certainly didn't watch every single interview or panel appearance that you did during your campaign. But everything that I saw from you seemed very, well, I don't want to say rehearsed, but you seem to be very conscious of that. You didn't want to be caught off guard. Were you ever? Because what you were describing sounded like that may have happened to you at some point.
It was weird. I had an experience with a reporter, and they were asking me general questions, and then out of the blue they go, trigger warning, but they go, how does it your lawsuit with the city, something about Des Moines Police Department and how it affected me, and they're you have this, and I was not expecting that, right? I was expecting this to just be quick interview, and then they asked me about my traumatic experience with the police department, and that threw me way off track, right? Because then I'm thinking about this traumatic experience that I had and not why I'm running for mayor.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of I remember you sometime not long after you announced, it was also in the news that your lawsuit was going forward. And so I definitely thought that was interesting. I don't know, interesting timing to have both of those going on in your life at once. Like what you were just saying, obviously it's hard to keep focused on your campaign if somebody's asking you about a horrible thing that happened to you a couple years ago. Was this an issue that you ever brought up yourself, as you were campaigning?
Yes, on my own terms.
Sure.
I never would go into detail, and it's not something that I would consistently share because it doesn't pertain. Well, yes, in the fact that when people would ask me straight up in panels, how do I feel about the Des Moines Police Department, or a third party review, or de-escalation training.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would be brought up, but my main point of the fact is sharing more of a fact, right? Because I don't want to make it, I never wanted to make it about me. I wanted to make it about the people who are affected by policing in their community.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot more than you. This was not an isolated incident from the Des Moines Police Department. Yes,
and it's the whole when they first did de-escalation, who did it? Michael Fong, who literally took advantage of a handicapped person, and had multiple marks against him within the police force, and was part of a training. And the Des Moines Police Department has also been trained in killology, where it's don't be afraid to point and shoot, don't escalate, just do it.
Yeah. I feel like probably most of the people who would listen to what we're doing now probably are aware of that. But like that, what Denver just said, like that's how police are trained all over the country is to like view the people that they quote serve and protect as like potential threats at all times. Like they view themselves as like a tier above the general public. Any member of the general public, they have the duty to kill at any moment should the need arise. That's the mindset that they're in as they patrol the streets that we have to share with them. I have a feeling that you, Denver, are probably the only mayoral candidate who would be willing to talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, weird. And I've definitely shared it in a bunch of panels. I shared it in front of Dana Winger, our chief of police. Mm-hmm. I was in I don't want to say what neighborhood panel it was, but I was in a panel and Joe Gatto, incumbent Ward 4, pretty openly racist a little bit, was there with Dana Winger, our chief of police, I think Scott Sanders, our city manager, and Dana Winger's wife. Joe Gatto has a picture up in his restaurant, right, of him and Trump. But anyways, there was also like 3 fully armed police guards in the back as well. And this meeting, the moderator like personally attacked me, and I like left the meeting, and I remember sitting in my partner's car and just crying because it just felt so publicly humiliating. Yeah. But I knew I was already in front of these people who were so against me, and still bled out for them and like spoke my truth. Like I didn't back down, and that's like very hard.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, I mean, the fact that you got through that is a testament to your strength and perseverance. I don't know how else to phrase that. Like what you've experienced over the past few months is significant, and I think you did a great job getting through all that.
Thank you. It was like also in this panel, one of the questions was, what are you going to do about our homeless population and the annoying panhandling happening at intersections? And I said, first of all, this like question is insulting to the houseless community. This question is insulting to me as somebody who has faced houselessness in the city of Des Moines. Mm-hmm. And why are people brought to that point of having to panhandle, right? Yeah. And the moderators responded specifically to me and not my fellow whatever candidates, was like, well, they're so annoying, and you realize that we call the cops on them and the cops pull them away and then somebody else replaces their space. So like obviously the cops need more funding so we can handle these panhandlers more. And I was like, what?
Yeah, I mean, just the thought process there, like somebody who is in a desperate situation asking you for money. I mean, and you probably just said no and kept walking away, right? So it didn't really inconvenience you at all. Just the fact that you are just annoyed by this person's presence means that they should be removed from society. Like you believe that your own very temporary, very brief discomfort means that a human being is no longer a human being. Do they ever like have any moments of self-reflection after they say things like that?
I would imagine not, because the people they surround themselves with feel the same way. And sometimes I can kind of feel that same way too. Like when I get like only organizing in movement spaces or only talking to like my close friends, I'm like, how do these people, like, I'm like dumbfounded. I'm like, how do these people not realize that housing is a human right, or like transit is the backbone of an accessible city? But I have to realize that those people exist outside of my sphere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with the campaign, I really had to get gritty, so they can like feel my emotion. I had to like share my personal experiences over and over again to cross that sphere. I'm a very visual person, obviously.
Yeah, Denver is making a circle with their hands right now to make the sphere.
So,
right, everyone is to some extent in a bubble most of the time, because it's just nicer for us to talk to people who feel the same way that we do. And yeah, obviously if you're going to campaign for mayor, you're going to have to leave that bubble sometimes and try to penetrate another bubble, because obviously they're in a huge bubble as well. Everyone else involved in like the spectacle of a mayoral election is in their own kind of bubble. This is just rich people deciding who's gonna run the city. That's their bubble.
Yeah.
And within that bubble, a houseless person is an annoyance that needs to be dealt with force. That's a bad bubble to be in, I think.
It's real hard, like, leaving your bubble, I guess.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, those people never would have been confronted with any ideas outside of their own very small worldview had you not, forced your way into the conversation.
Yeah, just make them uncomfortable a little bit. I always say where you're uncomfortable is where you grow as a person. Mm-hmm. And these people who probably have never had the same experiences as when they hear that, hopefully it ripples them a little bit. I strongly believe that your personal story, your personal experiences are the strongest tools you have in your toolbox to reach across and say, things could be different. Things could be better, right? And like, you may not be able to relate, but you can feel the uncomfortability of existing in that space, right? You can relate that this isn't okay and that we all have our own personal experiences. So I strongly believe that your personal story is like your strongest way to make those connections and to be able to move people or radicalize them even. Yeah,
it may be a tall order for some of those people at those neighborhood meeting panel type things, but you got to start somewhere.
At least I can make them a little uncomfortable,
Yeah. I mean, that's what's happening with that, that panhandling scenario too, is like the reason they feel uncomfortable is because they know like deep down they're a person too, and they know that this unequal situation, like a person who has all the money can just continue walking down the street, and a person who has no money, that's not right. That person has as much right as you to live a comfortable life,
I was just thinking, I'm like, so how they say like, and I relate to this, like I'm one like doctor's bill or like missed paycheck from living on the streets. But for them, it's like you're one divorce without a prenup and you're on the street. So, they'll never understand, and they probably don't want DART to get funded.
No, they have no reason to want that. It doesn't benefit them. So
yes.
The big spenders of the race, Connie and Josh, you were much closer to this situation than I was. Why did Connie win?
Connections to developers, to corporations. She never spoke on affordable housing. Josh's middle ground was affordable housing, but through new developments, right? And then I'm on like the left spectrum where I'm like, we shouldn't have new developments. We should keep people in their houses and do rent caps, right?
Right.
But Connie said, we're open for business. What was it? Nationwide leaving is opportunity. I view Wells Fargo leaving as opportunity. That's why she won, because she was able to use those connections to get funding from those people. The fact that County, Gatto Westergaard and Voss, other counselors, and the current mayor backed her, is to continue the status quo, that we will uplift developers, that we will uplift corporations, and we will not protect tenants from their landlords.
Mm-hmm. Right. So she took the position of continuing a sort of status quo where the city government is completely in service to real estate and development.
Yeah, basically.
And you were the total opposite, you know. And then Josh took what is pretty much like the obvious liberal Democrat style triangulation, and he tried to thread the needle between the two of you. And it was, I guess, you know, what's appealing about that, you know, like go halfway in between. Does that really excite anyone?
I spoke to a voter, somebody that was on my like contact list for like supporters, basically. I don't know. And I was doing like a last call around, and they go, I support you. I support your ideas. Like everything you stand for, I stand for. But I voted for Josh Mandelbaum.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, why is that? And they're like, it lesser of two evils, you know? So even the people who see the same way I see or claim to be don't believe that we have a fighting chance. And
right.
I don't, and especially people who felt the same way, because nobody experiences are very singular, that think the same way is not good. It's understandable with being an American and growing up in capitalism.
Yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that.
No, I know what you mean. And it's hard to, I guess, accept that, you know, this person who you're talking about, they recognize that everything that you're saying is right. Your vision of how the city could be is just and the way things should be. But it seems impossible to achieve that. And so they bailed and they voted for this sort of compromise guy. But he lost anyway. He still lost, you know? So if he's going to lose anyway, you know, why not go all in and just do everything you can to advocate for the actual just vision of how the city could be?
Yeah.
If the conservative's going to win either way, you know?
It's hard. And that kind of correlates to like the hardest part of my campaign was like speaking to people wasn't hard, and activating people through my speeches wasn't hard. But what was hard was getting people to show up, right? To people to canvass and door knock, because this was the first mayoral race without a runoff. And if we really want to get progressive people in office, and people who are going to challenge the status quo, and I understand that voting, and I understand that getting elected officials are not going to accomplish our goals of abolition and liberation overnight. But I believe that the fight for a just system and for liberation is multifaceted, and everyone has a place, which is why I ran for mayor. And I understand there's so much going on in the world, and it feels so hopeless with like looking at our presidential campaign coming up. And it feels very scary. But that was like the hardest part for me, was getting canvassers to sign up. But why was that hard for me is because I understand, as a working class person, as somebody who's under the same pressures as these people I'm asking for help from, it's impossible.
Yeah. You're not going to
it's hard.
You're not going to get mad at people who don't have any money or time to spare, you know?
Yeah. And that was like never a point. And I was like, I had those disadvantages of not getting money or not going into this campaign a lot of money. Like, we didn't hire a campaign manager. I was the one who was cutting all the lists and all the turfs and writing all the scripts, on top of working full time. So.
Right. Am I remembering right that you have to pay the Democratic Party for a lot of the voter info?
That was our biggest purchase of the campaign. I think it was $600 to get the voter database of the Democratic Party. And Vote Builder is so seriously outdated. It's so hard. It's so complicated. If I didn't have previous experience with the Bernie Sanders campaign using Vote Builder, I would have been fucked. Like, I would have been like, like, it would have been easier to just not use it and just blindly knock doors.
just try to keep track of which doors you knocked.
Just like print out like Google Map sheets and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Hey, I don't know who lives here. Anybody here eligible to vote?
Like, what's going on? You own a house? You rent? You can vote.
Yeah.
Which I've done.
Really? Just blind?
Yeah. I not for my campaign, but I did some movement politics. I worked for movement politics for Iowa CCI twice.
Yeah.
And the second time was to register new voters. So we would just print out like a Google sheet and like highlight like these blocks you're going to hit. And then just you would write everything down. Yeah.
That's a lot of work. And it's brave.
It's hardcore.
To knock on someone's door and have no idea who's inside.
Yeah. But it was always like, it was just like neighborhoods with low voter turnout. So like a lot of like in the Riverbend neighborhood, which is more like lower income, but like the community there is like so tight. Like those are like families. I've never knocked or canvassed a neighborhood that was like so close together and looking out for each other.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't saying that you should be scared of people, just more like a social anxiety thing. Like I felt when I was doing canvassing for like campaigns and I could see on the list like, all right, this is the person, this is their age, and if there's like any other info, it's like it puts me at ease a little bit. Like I have an advantage. I know more about you than you know about me.
You know what puts me at ease more is that like, was it like 3 on the higher end, 5% of the doors you knock, somebody's going to answer.
Yeah.
People are most likely to answer their phone than their door. And in this day and age.
Yeah. Which is kind of surprising because I'd never answer the phone.
Yeah. Would you answer the door if it was just like you weren't expecting anything?
I usually do. It does happen occasionally, but I'm also usually like, if someone saw me through the window, I can't leave them out there. It's too weird.
Are they looking through your windows?
Well, you know, we got a big window out front that right next to the front door. So they probably saw me through the big window.
Well, then they know to leave you alone if you walk the other way.
Yeah.
No, it was interesting, but I've been like, I door knocked for Bernie in the south of Iowa and got called like racist terms and like had a gun pulled on me and all that crazy shit. So I feel like being a person of color, you have to be loud, you have to be brave, and you have to get uncomfortable sometimes. You just can't avoid it. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a few like uncomfortable situations, but I'm a white guy, so like we just don't get threatened the same way, you know? But there was in 2016 when I was knocking doors for Bernie, there was a guy a couple blocks that way. I live in Coralville, so not like rural at all, not South Iowa. And this dude, I knocked on his door and then he came out the side door. This was dead of winter. He came out the side door shirtless. And I was like, hey man, you know about Bernie Sanders? And he was like, Bernie Sanders is a piece of shit and you need to get the fuck out of here. And I was like, all right, see ya. That's like the most aggressive anyone ever was with me.
Yeah.
I never had a gun pulled on me.
It's kind of silly too that there was the only like attack ads or flyers that came out during this campaign was against Josh Mandelbaum. and specifically about how he wants to raise property taxes for his clients. And they're like, no, we don't want that. But like, it's also kind of silly because our property taxes in Des Moines are the lowest they've been in like years. And also, like, there is a cap on property taxes, which have been lowered through the state house.
Right. I was going to say that's a state regulation, right?
It's just like, what do we do? What do we do with that funding is what matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard like that it was like backed by Mid-American Energy, where
the attack mailer was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like not by them specifically, but allegedly.
Right. Some sort of like umbrella pack.
Yes, there was. And the people who endorsed Connie Boesen also forced Josh Mandelbaum to recuse himself during the last Mid-American franchise agreement.
I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know all the ins and outs of that situation, but I remember it seeming like a big coward move from him to recuse himself.
He didn't fight back. I called him out on this during a panel.
Mm-hmm.
But like some panels had different rules, and this panel was like one of the only ones where you could respond if they said your name specifically. And his excuse wasn't very good, because he was like, because I work with lobbyists that are working against Mid-American, but also other counselors are taking huge bribes from corporations and not recusing themselves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He's trying to take the high ground, but for the purpose of being steamrolled. Like, it doesn't make you look good to anyone who would care.
Right. Yeah. It's just always just trying to play the middle ground. And it's a huge shame that he's the most liberal council member, right?
Yeah.
They're having a special election in March for Connie Boesen's seat because she won mayor and she used to hold an at-large seat. So that's open.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I don't know anyone who's progressive that would want to run. I don't know. People keep asking me, they're like, oh, you're going to run for at-large? And I'm like, what would I get done? I would be alienated. The procedural rules, which probably won't change under Connie Boesen, procedural rules like you cannot speak unless spoken to by the mayor.
Like your children.
Yeah, like will not change because these rules came up when Indira was elected. So if anyone gets
for the purpose of, fucking her over.
I think and I did not reach out to anyone about this or even brought it up but I feel like to really get change locally in city council, you need to run a slate campaign. And you all need to be working together. If you're running grassroots campaign, you all have to align on specific things, which it was really hard to feel like kind of just go through it. I feel like that would be it. But like I said, voting and electing people are not going to change things overnight. And why does anything happen? It's because of people power built outside of that. It's people power built outside of City Hall. People power built outside of the police force, right?
Yeah.
And that's like the only thing that's going to get it done. But the struggle for liberation is multifaceted, and we need people at all angles attacking. And
it's a huge mountain to climb.
Yeah, I always ask myself, like, where do I best suit my community? And I felt like community organizing, I was getting real fucking tired of it falling on deaf ears. Like, I got real tired of showing up to council meetings, and I got real tired of showing up to corporations headquarters and like doing all these actions. And I felt like it wasn't getting nowhere besides obviously building people power and giving resources to communities. But I felt like things were not going to change. And our government is so ingrained into our society from colonization. and capitalism, that like the only way I felt like I was the most powerful and apt to do it was to run for mayor, which is a huge reason why I ran for mayor instead of running for a smaller seat, was because it gives me a bigger platform. It gives me space to have to say these things in front of Connie Boson and Josh Mandelbaum, who have been ignoring me for like 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So,
and really, I mean, honestly, the former context, when you were confronting them at city council meetings, that's where it's really their job to listen to you. But these panel situations, it's like that's a competition, you know. They're not obligated to listen to you there, but because you elevated yourself to the same level as them, it sort of, you know, forced their attention.
Yeah, and I would say it did the same to me from them to them, right? I feel like Josh and Connie have more of a personal relationship now, which I don't know what that means moving forward. Maybe it just means that I'm more comfortable calling them up about issues. But I don't know what that looks like or what that means for me in city council moving forward. I'm still going to be showing up and organizing around city council, so I don't know how that dynamic's going to change.
Right.
But
how's it going to be different post-campaign?
I was very straightforward too about like not going anywhere. Or can I talk about the erasure of my work around this community really fast?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the abortion thing too, but I know it's more than that. But yeah, in the last month or 2 months of the campaign, Josh sort of put himself out there as like the abortion candidate.
Yeah, and before that, it was like climate justice, right?
Right.
So in panels, or in general, talking to people, he takes credit for the 24/7 carbon-free resolution, which was passed in Des Moines, I don't know, like a year ago or maybe, which is like a really crazy policy to be passed locally. It's the most aggressive in America, definitely the state of Des Moines. And the only reason it was passed was because me and like CCI's climate justice team were organizing around it. We showed people up to meetings. We called counselors. We did email blasts. And the resolution ended up being very whitewashed of what we wanted, but it ended up getting passed unanimously, and Josh presented it. So he takes credit for the 24/7 carbon-free resolution that was passed unanimously. But why was it passed? It was community members showing up and pushing them to do the basic thing that we deserve, a livable planet.
Right.
Question mark. So that was really frustrating. And then these flyers started coming out about how Josh was the only candidate to stand up for reproductive rights, or women's abortions, specific wording. And I was like, people were just sending it to me, like their mailers. And I'm like, yeah, I know what's going on.
Looks like a direct insult to you. Yeah.
And I was like, so previously to running for mayor, I sat on the Iowa Abortion Access Fund board. I sat on the board literally as soon as I joined, Roe v. Wade got overturned, right?
So you joined the board right before that?
Yeah, I literally didn't even go through onboarding. It was just this is happening, figure it out, which was fine because I was already an organizer anew, but I helped organize the Roe v. Wade statewide action. So I remember going to my hometown of Mason City, Iowa, and having 120 people show out, which is unreal.
It's pretty good for Mason City, right?
Yeah. And I did a lot of frontline organizing. And when I confronted Josh Mandelbaum about this after a panel. I said, like, I pulled him aside and I said, hey, my supporters are sending me this flyer or mailer you sent out about how you're the only person to stand up for abortion rights in the state of Iowa, or like the only candidate to stand up for abortion rights. And I was just basically like, this is erasure of my work in the community. I have been on the front lines organizing for abortion way longer before you tried to enact some policy that didn't happen. And he was like, oh, I'll just have to look at this mailer myself. That it was mostly to draw a distinct line between him and Connie, because she wasn't in support of the policy. And I was like, I want you to know, like, I was on the front lines organizing. It's insulting to me. And then I was very stern and saying, like, when this election is over, like, no matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere. Like, you're going to have to deal with me. And I was like, the only times that, like, your ideas get passed is because it's backed by people that I'm helping organize, or backed by the people who are my supporters, right? Like the 24/7 carbon-free resolution. And he just, like, I don't know, did not, kind of just, like, got deer in headlights and offered to get coffee after the election.
Yeah. Have you taken him up on that? It's only been a week, but...
No. I mean, Connie Boesen called me on Friday and haven't even called her back, so...
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens there. It just felt very disregarding and insulting, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right to feel that way. It did. Just on its face, it looked that way. It's like, really, you're the champion of abortion in this race. And I guess
he kept like going with it too, which was weird. And like the fact that, like, we can make a policy that Des Moines can be a safe haven.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Like, what's the specific of this policy?
The policy was surrounded by making sure that the city had funding to help city employees access abortion, or have city employees, like, be able to get funding to transit for abortion. But if you don't work for the city, where does that leave people, right?
Yeah. And just to be clear, most residents of Des Moines do not work for the city, right?
I would say so.
So this only helps a pretty small number of people.
Yeah. So, like, the only thing that, like, what I was part of my campaign was, like, not just a policy, but making Des Moines a safe haven, right? Like, putting out a statement like Minneapolis did, that will be a safe haven for people who have abortion. We'll do everything we can to protect those people. The fact that abortion is more of a statewide issue is kind of weird for somebody to run on abortion when it's not very much a local thing.
There's only so much you can do. Yeah. But it is good to take, I mean, it would make so much sense for the Des Moines city government to take an adversarial position with the state government, because the state legislature and the governor are, like, fucking over the whole state, obviously, but in particular, urban residents of Iowa. So it's also local representative of the urban residents should try to protect their people against the state government.
Yeah, it's like helping amplify those voices and, like, stating that we'll be a safe haven, will, like, maybe, but it's also like the state decides how much funding we get for our budget from the state, right? Like, how much we can spend. So if you, like, actively take on the state in that way, they will attack you back.
They'll retaliate.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
Is there anything else?
I feel like I learned a lot from this, like, post campaign catch up with you. Is there anything else that you want people to know about?
I would pay attention to what's happening with Palestine and the silent genocide that's happening in Congo right now. And also that even though I lost this election, I feel very confident in the things that we did during this, like activating new people and building more people power. I also think that paying attention to what's happening locally is just as important as paying attention to things that are happening globally. And what's happening locally is disgusting. It's really hard to think about, but we'll be okay if we have each other, right? We'll be okay if we have community. Dart's being cut 40%, which is really sad. Des Moines People's Town Hall is back and better than ever.
That's right. Yeah, keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I'm not stopping. I'm going to keep going. So if you want to keep being involved in local organizing, follow Des Moines People's Town Hall because, we're going to kill it.
Yeah, do that.
And we just had our 3-year anniversary.
Yes.
So snap.
Yes. So be part of Des Moines People's Town Hall's 3rd year, or I guess now you'd be in your 4th year, right? I think that's how that works. So.
We're seniors.
Yeah. All right. Well, Denver, thank you for, getting all this out there, telling the people the truth about what's happened the past few months. And I think you should be proud of what you did with a 4-digit budget versus 2 6-digit budgets. I think that you accomplished quite a deal with very, very small resources. Just proves the strength of your message and how willing you were to devote all of your time and energy to getting that message out there.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hey, it's me. I'm alone now. Denver has left. I didn't want to subject them to the podcast bullshit that has to go at the end of the episode. But first things first, DART, that's the bus system in Des Moines. DART stands for Des Moines Area Regional Transit. And for the record, that's what I was thinking while we were recording that interview, but I didn't want to say it because it seemed stupid. Because Des Moines is 2 words, and DART, the acronym, cuts the M out of it. That would be DMART, right? But it's DART. Anyway, I hope that you all enjoyed that exclusive interview with ex-mayoral candidate Denver Foote. I'm very grateful to them for spending some time with me this evening. I've been, of course, wanting to do an episode following up on the election because leading up to it, we had made some endorsements and some anti-endorsements, but I've been very busy. I've been playing shows out of town with my band, BCJ's, so I'm glad that I was able to connect with Denver real quick to get something out there. But while I'm here editing this episode, I also wanted to acknowledge some of the other races that we had commented on previous episodes. So first things first, Laura Burgess beat her competition, Pauline Taylor, for the Iowa City Council race by like a 2-1 margin. And this is in spite of, or I would theorize because of, a last-minute sort of anti-endorsement of his own from Iowa City Mayor Bruce Teague, who put out this statement. This was either the night before the election or possibly even the morning of. It was like a last-minute thing. And he put out this like fear-mongering statement about how Laura Burgess is like this dangerous anti-police candidate, which I believe mobilized certain anti-police elements of the Iowa City community to get out the vote for Laura. So that really blew up in your face. And I'm glad that it did. Because again, Pauline Taylor is an anti-podcast member of city council, but not for long. She's on her way out. And that's what she gets for preventing grandchildren from listening to our show. The Iowa City school board candidates that I anti-endorsed also lost, as did, I think, every Moms for Liberty endorsed school board candidate statewide. That's pretty funny. It's funny that they all went really hard against teaching kids about being gay. I mean, I think that's kind of their main thing. And that also blew up in their faces. So congrats to them. Unfortunately, on the school board front, our very good friend Dexter Merschbrock lost his re-election bid. And I'm hoping to catch him and be able to interview him as well, like I just did with Denver, but we are struggling to align our schedules. You know, he's a busy working man, and I am a busy, well, I'm busy too. Anyway. But yeah, maybe we'll get more into that with him, hopefully in the near future. But it's just interesting that the $220 million Cedar Rapids school bond did not pass. It failed miserably. But the only incumbent candidate who was opposed to that bond, the position of the voting populace of Cedar Rapids, the only incumbent who shared their position was voted out, while the incumbents who were in favor of that bond remain in their seats. So there's something going on there. Hopefully Dexter and I can talk about it soon, and that may end up being episode 126 and a half. So look out for that. All right, before I go, I want to remind you all, we have a phone number, 319-849-8733. You can call in, share your thoughts with us anytime. Here's a recent message we got from, well, a guy who calls in pretty frequently, but here he is.
Rock Harders. Is that what I would call you? It's me. Always me. Just me. If I was only Democrat and state auditor. Rob Sand. I've lost track of how many years I've been on the gondola. It just goes up and up and up. Below me are nothing but dark clouds, throbbing and pulsing with purple lightning. It's so odd. To my left, endless empty seats, clicking and clacking. Ahead, just the other seat. I haven't seen anyone or anything in so long. I miss you all so much. I just wish that I had more time to... Wait. What's that? What's that up ahead? A light! Piercing through the dark clouds! My freedom! Oh, my tweets! And my press conferences! They'll be back! I can be popular again! Oh, no. Oh, no. No, no, please, no! It's Caitlin Clark. She's on the other path. Coming right at me. I can escape. It's right there, but she's back, podcasters. Why is she back? Why can't she leave me alone? Oh, she's glaring at me, at my soul, at my sins. No, don't reach for me. Her arm is stretching out farther than it should. Warm butter dripping down into the dark. Don't touch me. Leave me alone. I'm Iowa's only Democrat and state auditor. Robson.
Okay, so the latest in the ongoing saga of State Auditor Rob Sands' attempts to escape some sort of dark alternate dimension that he was trapped in while attending the Iowa State Fair. Things are not sounding good this time around. Maybe he's trapped forever. He was close to escape, but he was, sounds like he was grabbed by the butter sculpture and dragged back. So, here's a theory that people may want to spread to their friends and relatives. The Rob Sand that we see in our dimension, the one that I saw in Cedar Falls not long ago, may in fact be a replacement, not the original Rob Sand, a new one that has been presented to us to put our minds at ease. No, there is no dark alternate dimension, and no one is trapped there. See, he's right here. Everything is normal and fine. If you would like to discuss this theory, you can call us at 319-849-8733. We'd love to hear from you. In addition, we also have a P.O. box that you can mail things to. P.O. Box 5336 in Coralville, Iowa, 52241. And this week, I received in that P.O. box an advance copy of Amber Lee Frost's book, Dirtbag. So this, these are the kind of connections you make when you guest on a very popular podcast one time. You end up getting free books before they are released in stores. But also, I got a couple bottles of hot sauce mailed to me from a listener named Alan, who I believe lives in California. Yes, Alan in California listens to an Iowa politics podcast, and I'll read a bit of his note here to explain why. This is from Alan. I stumbled across the podcast when Natalie went on Eat the Rich way back when. Been a fan since. I've never been to Iowa, but as a socialist who grew up in a small town, and then town is crossed out and he replaced that with area. So he grew up in a small area that's mostly farms and woods, and he relates. I think I'm the lowest tier Patreon subscriber, but I just got a bunch of hot sauces to send out, so I'll send a couple your way. Hope you like them. You can, if you end up with some extra bottles of hot sauce, I wouldn't mind checking them out. So thanks, Alan. Speaking of Eat the Rich, it's a defunct podcast now, and I noticed the other day that their SoundCloud subscription lapsed. And so those episodes that Natalie and I guested on are no longer available, as far as I can see, anywhere on the public internet. So I have reached out to the hosts of that now defunct podcast to get their permission to rehost those episodes. I'll let you know if I hear back, and those may end up on our podcast feed in the near future. Alan mentioned our Patreon. Alan from California. That's at patreon.com/rockhardcaucus. If you enjoy the podcast and you would like us to be able to keep making it, you could send us a little bit of money on there. And a lot of that money, by the way, goes towards paying guests to come on the show, such as the person I interviewed on the show today. So we are able to pay people to podcast with us because of the support of people who subscribe to our Patreon. And you also get a whole bunch of extra fun, silly episodes on there that if you like this show, the free show, you probably enjoy the stuff that we charge for. So check it out if you have money. Thanks. Another thing to check out, I mentioned that I've been busy because I've been playing shows out of town with my friend Brian. Our band is called BCJ's. It's spelled just like how it sounds. And if you live in Iowa City, or if for some reason you live in Galesburg, Illinois, there's 2 more chances to catch us playing our weirdo music on tour this weekend. The 17th, November 17th, this Friday in Iowa City, we're playing at Public Space 1, the Close House Mansion on Gilbert Street, and a good friend M. Denny will also be playing some music. And then in Galesburg on the 18th, November 18th, this Saturday, we're playing at the Galesburg Community Arts Center, which should be a rocking good time. We played a few shows last weekend to do like the first half of a tour. I've been recording every performance. I've got a multi-track recording of every single one. And that's what I'm going to play for you now. So you get a little taste of the BCJ's live experience that may entice you to come listen to us this weekend. The 17th in Iowa City, 18th in Galesburg. So here it is, just a taste of BCJ's live to play us out. What does that mean to play us out?